Hey, good morning. It's Patricia Murphy. It's Thursday. This is Seattle Now. The big green and white state ferries are part of the landscape here. And for some people, the ferry is more than just a way to get back and forth to work.
It's a great way to decompress after work, and actually it's a great way to come to work. Because with the scenery and everything, it kind of just relaxes you.
The current ferry situation is anything but relaxing, though. KUOW's Casey Martin will tell us why in a minute. But first, let's get you caught up. On KUOW's Fall Membership Drive, thanks so much to everyone who took 2 minutes to kick in what they could and help KUOW raise almost $1 million. That helps this small but mighty podcast team keep bringing you episodes every day. Thank you for that. And thanks especially to the Seattle Now listeners who pitched in. I'm talking about Alex in Snohomish, Carlos in Bremerton, Gabriel in Duval, Zoe, James, Viet, Hannah, and Nick in Seattle. Thank you all so much for listening and supporting KUOW so that everyone can listen. Not too late to join them. You can still make a gift at KUOW.org. Okay, now some news.
It's our goal to vaccinate these 5 to 11-year-olds as quickly and equitably as possible. That is our path out of this pandemic.
More than 300,000 doses of Pfizer's COVID vaccine are on their way. That's ahead of an expected FDA approval for 5 to 11-year-olds. There are about 680,000 children in Washington who would be eligible, but state health officials say they don't expect all of them will get a shot. Starbucks is boosting barista pay. The company announced yesterday it'll pay an average of $17 an hour by next summer, up to $23 an hour at the high end. Employees will also see raises early next year and more shots at training and advancement. The news comes as Starbucks is facing a union drive at 3 stores in Buffalo, New York. And Sonics legend and NBA Hall of Famer Lenny Wilkins gets some love from the city today. This afternoon at the corner of First and Thomas, Mayor Durkin will unveil Lenny Wilkins Way. The new name will go up on Thomas Street along the south side of what used to be the Coliseum, back when Wilkins was a player and coach there. He joins Edgar Martinez, Dave Niehaus, and the Seattle Storm as the city's only sports heroes bestowed with some honorary pavement. The Washington State ferry system is iconic. 21 boats transport 24 million people a year to the islands around Puget Sound. Ours is the largest ferry system in the U.S., but it's also struggling. For months, a worker shortage resulted in chaos for commuters and travelers who were stranded while sailings were unexpectedly canceled. Now, all the boats are on a reduced schedule, which has cut down on the uncertainty, but long-term, it's no solution for people who rely on the system, and they are not happy. KUOW's Casey Martin has been looking into the situation. He's here now. Hey, Casey, you are actually on a boat right now, right?
Yes, Murph, that's right. I am on the boat right now from Seattle to Bainbridge. I just got on the ferry right now, and I got a spot. I got here early, so I'm glad I made it.
Sounds like you figured out how to circumnavigate this uncertainty around sailings. There has been so much turmoil with Washington State ferries. The worker shortage, of course, is a long time in the making, though. Give me some insight.
Yeah, this has felt kind of like a slow-growing problem all this year, kind of bubbling beneath the surface. Something that a lot of ferry riders didn't really want to acknowledge at first this summer, but really this fall, it's just been really rough for ferries and the people who rely on them. These past few weeks, there have been hundreds of cancellations. Boats are often hours late, and it really hasn't been a reliable service, especially on Fridays and weekends when people are trying to, get home.
Yeah. Tell me what the ferry service has done so far to try to remedy the problem. What are they saying?
The big thing that they did was, this month, Washington State Ferries announced that they are reducing the number of boats that serve some of their busiest routes. So for example, Seattle to Bremerton, Mukilteo to Clinton, Edmonds to Kingston, they all used to have 2 boats. And so, 2 boats going back and forth all the time. Now they're just down to 1 boat, just like a bus, just back and forth all day. The ferry system says that the cuts should make the ferry more reliable. So even if there are fewer routes, the idea is that the boats should show up on time. Washington State Ferry says that these cuts are indefinite. They didn't really give a timeline of how long they're going to be down to this reduced service, though.
You know, worker shortages seem to be the rule of the day, Casey, but these seem like good paying state jobs. What is the problem with recruitment and hiring right now for these boats?
You know, it's one thing that there seems to be a larger industry problem. Washington State Ferry says there's simply a shortage of trained mariners, people who are, ready to go hop on the docks, across the board. The Coast Guard has also had a difficult time staffing people. Industrial crabbing boats have had a difficult time. So the industry at large has had a tough time staffing people who are trained and ready to go out onto the water. Washington State Ferry said that this year that they did hire more than 100 people this year, but with COVID restrictions, it's just been really hard to both hire people and then also to train them to become working mariners.
Right. There's a lot of certification that needs to happen before someone can set foot on the boat. Even if it's a couple of weeks, that's still a delay.
Yeah.
Now, of course, workers are just one side of this situation, Casey. Commuters and travelers rely on the ferries, just like people here in Seattle rely on the bus system. You are at Coleman Dock. How are people going to and from Bainbridge and Bremerton adjusting to these changes?
Yeah, I've been here the last couple of days, and the big thing is get here early. That is the mantra everybody is saying. Just show up as early as you can so you'll be guaranteed to get on that boat. One person I spoke to is a commuter. He takes the ferry quite often. Eric Peppers, he commutes from Bremerton to Beacon Hill every day.
For the last 8 years. Yep.
So a regular for a while.
A regular, yep. Yep, every day, 5 days a week, even through COVID. Never missed a day. Yep.
Pepper says with this reduced schedule, there has been times that he's actually had missed the boat. And I asked him if he was able to hang out at the ferry dock, if he was able to stay here at the terminal.
No, I had to go stay with friends because they closed the terminals down. So, yeah. So if you missed the 9 o'clock ferry and I had a meeting and I missed it, and so I had to stay with friends. Yeah.
Are your friends on call? Do they know, okay, well, based on the schedule,
Yeah, they know. Yeah. I just called and say, hey, I'm going to be there in about 10 minutes. Throw your key down. So, yeah.
And so you hear Murph, he's pretty lighthearted that if he misses the boat, he's lucky he's able to go stay at a friend's place. A big thing he talks about, though, is communication. I asked him, okay, well, what about travel alerts? How does the ferry let you know if a boat is late or if it's canceled?
Thanks for that. But still, it's like, well, if you cancel 20 minutes before and I've already left my house, I'm screwed.
You know, Casey, this is a very difficult situation. I cannot imagine having to find a place to stay because I can't get back to the island. You also went to Anacortes recently and spoke to passengers. What did you hear from people over there?
A lot of folks up there, it's a different situation because there's so many folks that live on those islands and they're so dependent on the ferry system. There's no other way for them to get out there. And for the option of, I've met people who have actually slept in their cars overnight. They were unable to actually get up to the islands, so they've spent the night in their car and wait for a ferry in the morning. People on the islands, they feel very cut off. They feel that they're completely isolated up there. It's difficult to get to doctor's appointments, also fresh food. I went up to San Juan Island that only has a couple of grocery stores, and they really worry about supply chain issues and actually getting fresh produce all the way up there to San Juan Island. So for them, it's a real day-to-day struggle for them to feel connected here to businesses and to everything that people around here that in Seattle we rely on.
Absolutely, Casey. It's an excellent point. We are not just talking about commuters here. People need to leave the islands for all kinds of reasons to get medical care and appointments. It seems like we have thrown back to the old days before the ferry system, before the reservation system on the ferries, where if you wanted a ferry, you just had to show up and wait for it.
Yeah. I talked to some folks that said exactly that. They said, you know what, they threw their hands up in the air and said, you just got to show up as early as you can and wait for the first boat that shows up.
Yeah. Hopefully the island life has chilled them out a little bit. Also, of course, businesses are in the mix here. They rely on ferries to bring in supplies, to supply their businesses out on the islands. How are they coping with the challenges?
That's been a huge difficulty, especially for the islands. Again, when I was at the Anacortes ferry dock, I talked to a couple of large delivery trucks, folks that are driving these huge trucks full of supplies. One was for a construction company, and one was actually for one of those grocery stores. And they were so stressed out. They were rubbing their heads. They were pacing back and forth. Time is money if you're in the trucking industry, and so for them, they couldn't believe it. They show up at this dock. They feel like, the boat should be there. They're ready to go. They have it all timed out. And for them, every hour just costs them so much money. It's very, very stressful for them. Yeah,
I could imagine. Casey, what are you hearing about, other than showing up early, any other workarounds that people might be trying to manage right now?
A big thing that's become really popular, and Eric Peppers told me that this is the foot ferry. So there is a passenger ferry that goes from Seattle to Bremerton, and he said because of the boats being on reduced schedule, people know that the car ferry is reduced. And so he goes, that foot ferry fills up. He goes, the 3:55 p.m. ferry, that one is packed. So he goes, you got to get there early, but he highly recommends it. And, similar up in the San Juans, there is an inter-island walk-on ferry. That one has been delayed too, but people say that is somewhat reliable, and it does have the ease that you're able to kind of walk on. And if you're able to get around Shaw or Lopez Island, you're at least able to get there and back.
I would imagine that across the board, the boats are packed right now.
They're very busy. They are really busy. Even if the boat isn't canceled, every ferry I'm on, it does kind of feel packed to the gills. There's a lot of walk-on passengers, people who I've met that said, I used to drive and commute with the ferries, but because it's too much of a risk, I'm worried I might not make it on. A lot of people have made the switch to now walking on the ferries. And so I'm seeing more people kind of fill up the walk-on areas.
Washington State Ferries says the limited boat sailings are going on indefinitely. Is there any sense, though, about how long we'll be dealing with this worker shortage?
There really isn't. As you said, they've called it temporary, but they say they are trying to staff up. They're training new mariners. There's a couple of things that they are trying. They're offering ticket refunds for people who have missed their boats because of this altered service. And also up at the San Juans, there's also no-show fees will also be waived. So people who have had reservations and then they did not show up for the reservations, those fees are being waived right now to kind of ease the burden a little bit. But how long this will go on. I did talk to somebody who says maybe as we progress a little bit into winter, there's fewer tourists coming out. There's fewer people, riding the ferries for fun. It'll just be us commuters. Maybe it'll ease up around then, but he didn't really know.
All right, Casey, you're on a boat right now, and you are also a frequent ferry rider. Have these problems shown up for you? Tell me what your life has been like.
I'm pretty lucky. I got to say, this year I spoiled myself and I got a motorbike, and I discovered the world of on and off first on the ferries. And I fell in love with riding as many ferries as I could. And this summer I did meet so many people who, unlike me, that are just riding these for a pleasure cruise, actually really rely on this. This is real business. This is real. Their daily lives. People are trying to get to school and to work. So for me, it's allowed me to interview more people, get to meet new people. But it's definitely opened up a world of, especially the San Juans. There's people that are so cut off from there, and they don't have any other options. They don't have private boats. They don't have anything else. They're completely dependent on this ferry system.
What's it like out on the water right now, Casey?
It is a little choppy right now. The clouds are starting to clear, and I got to say, the blue skies above the Olympics, it really is a picture-perfect ferry day.
Lovely. KUOW's Casey Martin out on the water reporting on the Washington State Ferries worker shortage. Thanks so much.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thanks for listening today. Caroline Chamberlain Gomez produced today's show. Our production team is Jason Pagano, Clare McGrane, Jenny Cecil Moore, and Diana Opong. Matt Jorgensen does our theme music. I'm Patricia Murphy.
I have a thing for ferry boats.
I remember.